Hey everyone, today we'll be discussing using ISBoxer with EverQuest to set up a multi-boxing configuration for a 4-box. That's the setup that I'm going to use as I document and play EverQuest and upload more videos. And I like to use ISBoxer because it provides a bunch of utility that's important for the multi-boxing experience. Some of these utilities include the client grabber, which will then manage the windows for clients, which is especially useful as you have more boxes than windows. Another utility is the input broadcasting, which I heavily utilize throughout the gameplay experience. Having used ISBoxer for, I'd say, more than, I think, 10 years, it's been around for a while, um, I really enjoy the configuration and setup of the process because you can really configure this tool to give you a workflow for your gameplay that is very customized. Having video overlay and other kinds of details like that that allow you to fine tune your playing experience, whether they be having hotbars in your main window, having them in other windows, etc. I tend to have a viewport on my left monitor that shows all my clients at the same time using the VFX tools. Additionally, games like EverQuest benefit from having the windows managed in terms of the frame rate because auto follow is heavily contingent on the background FPS. So let's get started. Now that the interface is loaded for ISBoxer, you can see a few different features in the upper left-hand corner. You have the main hub for the characters, character sets, window layout, and I'll be basically discussing both of those pieces. First going a little bit of depth about window layouts, what I've found useful over the years, and then how to set them up via the wizard. In general, ISBoxer is built around having slots for characters that are placed in character sets. So character set is comprised of having slots where one slot is a particular character, and then these other features such as the window layout, the keyboard mapping, and all the other kind of details, you basically plug them into your character sets and you use them accordingly. And so from a configuration perspective, there are many things to do here. I think that, with respect to being able to see what you can do for your configuration of your multi-box experience, sometimes there's a little bit of trial and error, but overall, it's pretty self-explanatory, and the documentation, both online and on Discord, is quite good. Next, I'm just going to give a quick example of how the slots are set up for the character set. So you've seen me kind of expand the character in the character sets window here, menu here, and I'm going to click on one of the sets, in this case EQ Better 3, and you can see that there's 3 slots, EQ center, right, and left, basically where I have 3 windows, one for the center window, one for the right window, one for the left. Those are all different accounts that are firing up the EverQuest game client. And so the next section that I'm going to take a look at is the 4-box, which actually has 4 accounts and then a 5th slot that has been added, this VFX character, which is basically a dummy character, which allows us to check out these, extra kinds of features with respect to having a VFX video feed. And so those are going to be the things that get configured maybe somewhat manually after you use the wizard, which we'll be getting into shortly. The next component that I'm going to describe here before getting into a little mini tutorial are the window layouts. So in the case of the 3-box, as you can see, maybe I'll have my 3-box team here, and the regions are described as, so there's 3 monitors here. If I move this over here, you'll see display 2, display 3, etc. And it's very basic. Slot 1 goes with 1, 2, and 3, etc. EQ center, right and left. The other things that are really relevant are I bring in the option under this section above regions that allows instant window swapping and auto focusing. And what's really nice about that is it allows me to migrate my mouse across the clients that are captured by interspace, and they will automatically synchronize and refocus the game to where my mouse is currently at, rather than having to click multiple times, which gets a bit obnoxious over a longer gameplay session if you weren't doing that, or at least if I wasn't doing that. This works really well, of course, if you have a similar level of monitors, or at least enough monitors per client. It becomes a bit more clunky, I would say, once you start getting to the situation of having too many clients per number of monitors, or more monitors, or more clients per monitor, so to speak. And in that case, you might start looking at other kind of solutions, one of which I'll show momentarily. So for the four box, in this case I only have three monitors, and this is the situation I was just mentioning. I want to set up regions that are appropriate for my gameplay style. And so when I'm looking at typically my head's focused forward, I might have one region dead center in the center monitor for one client. And then on the right side monitor, I'll actually have all the other three clients that I can flip through quickly with a hotkey or series of hotkeys, and then the as needed and play them as appropriate. And then the left monitor here is actually reserved for an output VFX. With the output VFX, we'll be able to use Interspace to configure a variety of video feed overlays that sit on top of this reserved space, this number 6. And in one case, for instance, we can configure it to pass any of the 4 or 3 or whatever game clients in any of the regions of those particular game clients to these feeds. And so if you had a hot bar or the full game feed, you could fit it in a quadrant or whatever location in slot 6 here, or region 6, sorry. It should be noted that these are called regions, whereas these slots are the elements that you're filling characters into your given set. And so if we go back a little bit and we talk about this 4 box, you'll notice that there were 5 slots, 4 for the character accounts, and 1 for this dummy character for the VFX. And something that's relatively important about that is that whenever you create the VFX character, which is this dummy character, you need to be wary of how VFX behaves. In the case, if you don't check this box as an example, the VFX might migrate as you go from screen to screen to screen. And so just be wary of that. And so I checked this option here. Furthermore, the game that's actually running is this DX nothing, and you can experiment with this a little bit, but this is essentially a blank space that Interspace can then be used to explore and add these overlays to. Another element that is implemented here for the 4 box is that for the given characters themselves, specifically the character slots 2, 3, and 4, I'll be alternating them through on my right monitor as I previously showed. And so EQ right, left 1, left 2 have options to activate their slots. And so for that type of process, you can go to the particular character and the slot that it's in. So in the case here, you can see EQ right, and you can notice that I'll use the F2 key. Or in the case of this one, I'll use the F3 key, etc., the F4 key, and you can map these keys appropriately using the GUI. And so you can cycle through these different character slots dynamically as you play. And then, of course, you would always, if in the way that I'm setting up, you could have the VFX on the left monitor showing everything all at once anyway. So it allows you to have that kind of fine-grained control that is useful from a multi-boxing perspective. So now I'm going to show a wizard setup for EverQuest in a 4-box. We start off with a quick wizard setup up in Wizards. Go to EverQuest or any other game that's appropriate for you. And then you can configure your characters that you're going to load into what's eventually created in these characters and character sets. In this case, I'm just going to make test characters. Note that the game configuration can be adapted to whatever you need. You can always add new launchers, etc. For EverQuest, I actually created a custom client, and depending if you have a default install or a custom install, you might have to do this. What this does is essentially just launch the client without the initial launcher that precedes it. That I think plays a little bit nicer with the hooking system that Interspace has, but mileage may vary on that. If there are more questions on that, we can address it in the comments. So I'm going to add these characters to a team. So we'll have 4 characters. Alright, so the next thing we're going to do is click next. We'll keep it simple, right? Put a simple test 4 box as our team. We'll click next. All right, so here's our window layout. In fact, what I would do, you can browse the different window layouts that exist. There are many, and depending on your boxing situation, you might pick one. I'm going to go with no window layout because we're going to manually configure that in a moment. The last part here is to get into the frame rate monitoring and handling of the processor prioritization for each of the clients. Depending on what you have set up with your computer, play with these options. You can always adjust them in the wizards afterward. I'm going to pick round robin balancing, so it's going to basically be cores per slot committed per client. Since I'm going to have four, my machine has 8 cores available. Makes sense, 2, 2, 2, 2 for the allocation that's going on for each of the different clients. Finally, I'm going to set the backgrounds to foreground background above 60 because this is important for EverQuest's auto follow. So that Interspace and EverQuest client later on when you set it up will manage having a higher frame rate for the background, which will make auto follow much more performant. So we're going to click next. All right, the last part here that I tend to do is go relatively simple actually. I'll go with, in the case of EverQuest, generic broadcasting, and I'm going to turn it off so that doesn't start at the beginning of setting up all the windows. And then I'll use my mouse or some other hotkey to be able to toggle this broadcasting mode and have this, for instance, this Control-Shift-C configured to my mouse. And that'll allow me to handle broadcasting through my mouse whenever I want to send commands to all windows at the same time. And then you click Finish. You'll get some information here that may or may not be relevant for your setup. Generally speaking, for EverQuest, actually ignore this for now, and I will click Cancel, which will complete the wizard. So now you've set up the wizard for EverQuest, and honestly, the first thing really that you'll spend the most time on is just getting the window layout set up, and that's what we'll get into next. So after you finish the wizard, the next thing to do is go into Characters, click New Character, and make a new character. In this case, I called it VFX Char. Name it whatever you want. What you're going to be using it for, if you use VFX, is to lock this character into a slot and then ultimately a region to make your dynamic windows for the video forwarding. You want to pick the game and the game profile as seen here or something similar, but definitely the DX nothing. Furthermore, the video FX viewer stay when in background, because this will allow you to lock down the character, the video FX character, into that region rather than occasionally having it migrate into other regions on the window layout. Finally, you can bring the wizard into your given character set by going to the new character set. In this case, it was simple test 4 box. Right clicking on slots, click new slot, and then dragging the character that you created into that slot as such. And now you have your VFX character in that particular slot, and basically you're ready to start working on the window layouts. For the window layouts, you can go to the window layouts, click a new wizard. In this case, we're just going to click new window layout. We'll call it test 4 box and start working on the particular regions. As you see, I have 3 regions displayed here. What we're going to do is set up these regions in honestly any variety of ways. What I was doing previously is I would add regions individually. I tended to like the swappable region to be the lowest number. And so for instance, if I was going to swap slots 2, 3, and 4, I would make regions 1 for the region to navigate to, and then regions 2, 3, and 4 to be the elements that you're swapping to. And so you would click 1, you would click other regions 2, right, 3, and 4. You can also click duplicate regions. Again, since it's a GUI, there are a variety of ways to do this stuff. You then can add a region for the center display, which stays static in my case, and finally for the other display, which will be used for the VFX elements. So the next step in this process is to start allocating the regions to their particular slots. What you want to first do is set your character set for those slots to the character set, which is empty here at the moment. And so we'll take that simple test 4 box and put the character sets. The next thing is you can look at the different regions and you can start allocating them to the different slots and so forth. In fact, the first thing I'll do is I'll go to any particular region and I'll switch their swap group if it makes sense, because this is going to be not related to these other regions in terms of swapping character slots. Similarly with the center screen. make that swap group 2, and then leave these 4 regions, 1, 2, 3, and 4, which are the 2, 3, and 4 are underneath this. This one is displayed in the GUI, are all part of swap group 1. And so the next component of that is to assign the actual slots. And so, for instance, slot 5, which fits in region 6, would go here. You would then say for region 5, that should actually be slot 1 because that's going to be the character I load there. And then for the other regions, regions 2, 3, and 4, I'm going to have slots 2, slot 3, and slot 4. Finally, you'll need to configure a little bit more details related to the swap groups and in terms of how they behave. Generally speaking, for regions 2, 3, and 4, you might want to set the always on top mode to off because you're going to want to preferentially have slot 1 in this case, the way I have it set up to be on top. And so, whoops, I clicked the wrong slot. I meant to do this. Click the region, not the slot. And so you can click off on this foreground focus and similarly for region 4 off. Okay. What's useful too while you do all this configuration is you can save it, of course, and you can export to Interspace to see if it's upset. And in this case, it's good because it gives you some diagnostic information as to being that there's multiple assignments to character set slot number 1. So we can look at that, right? We have 6 regions. We can see, okay, region 1 has no slot. Good. Region 2 has slot 2. Region 3 is slot 3. Region 4 is slot 4. Region 5 should be slot 1. Good. And region 6 should be slot 5. So the thing that's going to be occurring here is that depending on how everything is configured, you might have the slots and their regions slightly mixed up, such that if we click save, export all to Interspace again, because it says, once again, the character says assigned to slot 1, we can try to debug this particular problem. Look at swap group, that would be why. Because the swap group 1 is also assigned to slot 1. So in case for this roaming slot, you're going to want to set this to null because it's going to be the base slot that everything gets loaded into it. Furthermore, the active region should be region 1 because that's what we're going to be moving everything into. We should check the other swap groups and leave them alone. They should all basically say no slot, no region, because we're not really using swap groups with those regions. So we can save one more time. We can export. And so now you can note that it says Interspace configuration export successfully. Honestly, this is one of those things you have to play with a little bit to get it just right. Start with a smaller number of windows clearly if you have a lot of boxes to work with and build some comfort with it. So the final part here that I want to show is what do we do with regard to the configuration of VFX. I'm not going to go into a huge demonstration on this because you can spend a lot of time on this. If there's really a lot of need, I could make another video of it. But what I tend to do is I'll set up, after this is all set up and I've exported, I'll try to fire up the application, right? And so I can go to the application. Of course, you'll have to run Interspace first to get it fired up. When you right click on Interspace, you're going to get your slots that you can load, as well as your character sets. Just for the purpose of this demonstration, I'm just going to load one set slot, and it's going to be the center one, just so we can play a little bit with the underlying architecture of Interspace and setting up these GFX. In fact, I might set up 2 just so I can mirror one that's from off screen. So I'll do that right now. So what I'm going to do here is I'll go to the test 4 box and we'll fire up slot 1. And so what's going to occur here is it's going to load the EQ game client. It's going to then hook into it using the Interspace architecture to grab onto the EQ game client, which is what you just saw it do right there. Okay, and now it's available. Furthermore, I'm going to open another one, and I'll open up test 2. Okay, so we'll give it a few seconds. So again, what's happening is it fires up another EQ game client Interspace, locks onto it, drags it into its architecture, and makes it available to Interspace. Note you can put these VFX options on any of these clients. It doesn't have to be that DX nothing or do nothing. And so you can have overlays all over the place. You could get a little bit crazy with regard to that. And so, just kind of play with it, have fun. That's actually some of the most fun parts about Interspace is setting up the graphics and setting up all the details related to your multi-boxing experience. So the last part here that I'm going to discuss in this video is the configuration of Interspace's VFX, and I'm going to just give a very quick tutorial on this just to show some of its use just in practice. I think that you can go a little bit wild with regard to all the different features with overlays and many windows in one window and so on. And so, that's part of the fun, right? So to begin with this, you'll fire up the Interspace GUI. I have it bound to Control Alt Shift G. And that brings up this element here. No, you click on the video effects, and what's convenient about the way this is set up is such that if you want to just mirror and send source information from one Interspace element to another, it's already kind of pre-populated in the sourcing of these details. Now, if you want to like trim down particular regions and so forth, then you might need to create little mini video sources of those regions. And I can leave that as an exercise to you all to play with that. In any case, the power is pretty obvious here, such that you can go to this um, video effects viewer. There are a few other options here: source, window source, whatever, for creating other kinds of sources to use as a viewer. And then what's nice is these are auto-populated based upon what the Interspace configuration is loaded. This will be the actual client name, whereas this is the parent name that houses this client, and use either of these in this example to feed back into a video repeater so that you can see what I'm about to do here. So I'm going to click IS2 and I'm going to add it to my screen. Notice it creates this green screen. And if I click that screen, there's this little viewer element here that allows me to select some of the configuration. I'm just going to have it or rechange the window, the width and the height of the window, um, just for sake of demonstration. Okay, and then I'm going to close the GUI. So now you can see that there's a window of within a window essentially. That is the power of this. Not only is it like this where you can go window within window, but you can also if you set the configuration correctly, click on these windows and actually do particular actions on them and so on and so forth. So you can click agree, you'll notice both of them do their particular process as desired, and lo and behold, you now have window within window capability, and you can manipulate these video effects as needed. So I think that's, I'm going to conclude with that. I hope that helps a little bit. Please let me know if you have questions in the comments section. I will happily upload another video demonstrating some other characteristic or feature, at least that I'm aware of with the software. There is a lot to Interspace that I probably don't even use, and I'm fully aware of that, so to speak. It's good to know what you don't know. And I didn't even get into, for instance, the key binding, of which there is a ton of with Interspace. So um, that could be potentially another tutorial if desired. Please check out Interspace's forums. They have a great Discord too. They've helped me with some questions in the past, specifically when it comes to nuisance programs in the background that might interfere with Interspace. And so enjoy using it, and hopefully you have a good time multi-boxing, whether that is EverQuest or any other game in the future. Thanks.